Episode 6 Echoes. It's a dark and rainy night, and you've almost finished your first shift as a tour guide in Stirling Castle. This is a formidable stone fortress perched at the top of a rocky hill above the historic market town. Second only to Edinburgh Castle, Stirling has been immersed in Scottish history, blood, and political turmoil for centuries. Some believe that echoes of the castle's past may have seeped like a stain into the stone walls and are occasionally replayed like a recording of our past. On this particular night, the rest of your colleagues have closed and locked up their respective areas, each of them sharing their progress via the walkie-talkie radios before heading to the guard room where everyone will hang up their official jackets and eventually sign out. You too are keen to get home and enjoy a long, hot bath after a day of leading groups all over the battlements, gardens and chambers. But before that, you need to lock up the large chapel as your final duty. Having switched off the lights, you step outside and pull the heavy wooden door closed behind you. It takes you a moment to find the correct key amongst the substantial bundle you were handed only that morning. By the time you locate the key and slot it into the keyhole, the rain is so heavy that you can hear the thrumming noise as it bounces off the cobbled walkways and slate roofs behind you. You turn the key and sigh in relief when it makes a satisfying click. It's then, while still gripping the key, that you feel the strangest sensation. You slowly turn around and find yourself looking directly at the strange woman in a long pink dress. She's standing just a few feet away from you and frowning deeply as if she wants to ask you something, or perhaps has been watching you all day and has finally got the chance to confront you face to face. Your brain struggles to process why this woman would be here at all, dressed in such an ornate fashion at that time of night. But your thoughts are quickly eclipsed with horror as you realise that the raindrops are continuing to fall through the transparent form of the woman who has haunted this castle for 500 years. As you clamber to find your radio and begin desperately trying to find the talk button, your visitor politely turns and fades away, leaving only the fragrant scent of rose petals hanging in the air like an echo. I'm Norman Brown, and you're listening to the Scary Scotland podcast, where we delve into the darker corners of Scottish life and legends to make connections with the wider world and culture. Tonight, in episode 6, Echoes, we travel across the country and the centuries to explore historical sites where the living and the dead overlap. So make yourself comfortable and come with me as we explore some of the most haunted and emotionally charged sites in Scotland. As we've seen in our previous episodes on cannibals and caves, fairies and forests, and vampires haunting our kirkyards, Scotland is a land steeped in legends, folklore and ghostly tales. So it's not surprising that from ancient battlefields to grand castles, many locations across the country hold not only historical significance, but also whispers of the supernatural. Whether you're a history buff, a serious ghost hunter, or just someone who loves a good eerie story, Scotland has plenty of places that will send shivers down your spine. And one of the most powerful for me is Glencoe. Glencoe is one of the most breathtakingly beautiful places in Scotland, and possibly my favourite place in the entire country. The rugged beauty of this valley provides a real glimpse of Scotland at its most raw and natural. In recent years, its haunting and unique landscape has provided an atmospheric backdrop for Hollywood movies featuring James Bond and Harry Potter. But despite its attraction as a filming location, Glencoe's tragic past casts a long shadow over the serene landscape. Glencoe in winter is a stunning but unforgiving place, and never more so than on February 13th, 1692. This was the date on which the infamous Glencoe massacre took place, when, at 5 a.m. in the darkness of early morning, government troops, under orders from King William III, slaughtered members of the MacDonald clan. The massacre followed an act of treachery, having generously offered their hospitality to the soldiers for nearly 2 weeks, the MacDonalds were betrayed and cruelly slain in their own homes, in their own beds. And the reason for such barbarism was simply that the clan had not sworn allegiance to the king quickly enough. By the time the sun rose over the blood-stained valley, 38 members of the clan, including men, women and children, had been butchered. Ever since that treacherous night, visitors to Glencoe report an overwhelming sense of sorrow and deep unease whilst wandering through the valley. Some of those who have climbed amongst the hills and peaks of Glencoe have claimed to hear ghostly screams carried by the wind, and many others have seen shadowy figures roaming the hills as if seeking answers to their senseless murder. The weight of history here in Glencoe is palpable, and it's no wonder it has earned its reputation as one of Scotland's most haunted places. But Glencoe is not the only location haunted by events from Scotland's struggle for independence. The Battle of Culloden, fought on April 16, 1746, marked the end of the Jacobite uprising and was a devastating defeat for the Scottish Highlanders who were attempting to restore Bonnie Prince Charlie to the throne. Thousands of Jacobite soldiers who had engaged in various rebellions against the removal of James VII lost their lives in a brutal and bloody encounter against the British government forces, which outnumbered them 2-1. But the aftermath of the battle was just as horrific. The victorious Duke of Cumberland, who'd led the English forces, issued an order which would earn him the title the Butcher. All wounded Jacobites and prisoners were to be executed. Today, Culloden Moor, which stands as a sombre reminder of the battle which marked the start of the Highland clearances and the end of a way of life, and for that reason is considered one of the most emotionally charged sites in Scotland. The place on which the battle was fought is the barren Culloden Moor near Inverness in the Scottish Highlands. Much like Glencoe, this place seems to be emotionally scarred by the blood that was shed upon it. Visitors have reported hearing the metallic clash of swords and the cries of dying men echoing across the moor. Ghostly apparitions of soldiers are said to appear in the early morning mist, and some people claim to feel an inexplicable sense of dread when walking across the battlefield. It's also a widely held belief that birds rarely sing in the area, as if nature itself is mourning the fallen soldiers. Another interesting aspect of this site is its proximity to the Clouty Well, located in Culloden Woods. This is a sacred place, similar to the fairy hill that we explored in episode 3. This time, it's a stone well rather than a tree that is the focus, though the trees are still relevant. If you go there today, you will find the edge of the well and some nearby trees draped with various rags. This is because locals who were suffering from different ailments would often use a cloth dipped in the water of the well to bathe the affected area, and then leave it tied to a nearby tree. As the cloth, or clouty as it was known, would eventually dissolve and disintegrate, leaving nothing behind, so too would the ailment that the person had suffered from vanish. One cannot help but wonder if some of the people who were wounded and hurt in the Battle of Culloden came to this well, perhaps to drink or to heal their wounds. Both Glencoe and Culloden Moor are haunted by a single bloody event from history, but many haunted buildings seem to acquire multiple ghosts, and perhaps nowhere more so than in the most famous building in the nation's capital, Edinburgh Castle. Perched atop Castle Rock, Edinburgh Castle dominates the skyline of Scotland's capital city. With a history spanning over 1,000 years, it's no surprise that the castle is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the country. In episode 2, we explored the deadly impact the plague had on the city's population, but this is only a small part of Edinburgh's dark past, which includes resurrectionists, or as we know them today, body snatchers, witch trials, murders, public executions, and of course 23 sieges on the castle. This makes it one of the most attacked castles in Northern Europe, and over the centuries it has served as a royal residence, military stronghold, and a prison, each adding layers to its ghostly reputation. Amongst the many spectral residents said to haunt the castle, the most famous is perhaps the ghostly piper. Legend has it that centuries ago, a piper was sent into the castle's underground tunnels to map them by playing his bagpipes. Those left behind in the castle would follow the sound of the pipe echoing through drains as he tried to figure out where the piper was. But as he listened intently, the music suddenly stopped, and despite frantic and persistent searches, the piper was never seen again. Whenever I read this story, I couldn't help but think of the creature mentioned at the end of episode 5, who resides in the tunnels beneath the city. Perhaps the piper discovered whatever that hungry creature was. To this day, eerie strains of bagpipe music are said to echo through the castle at night. Other paranormal encounters include shadowy figures, unexplained cold spots, and disembodied voices that seem to whisper through the thick stone walls. But Edinburgh is not the only castle where the long dead still walk. Stirling Castle, another iconic stronghold in central Scotland, is famed for its dramatic location, royal connections, and wartime significance. However, it's also known for its supernatural inhabitants. Like Edinburgh, Stirling Castle is located at the top of a volcanic crag, with steep rocky cliffs on one side and a grand esplanade and entrance on the other. It is also flanked on either side by the atmospheric Old Town Cemetery, where ghosts are said to walk. As a teenager, I spent many of my school days hanging around this stunning kirkyard, reading the weathered inscriptions and avoiding the stony gaze of the many statues. It's a peaceful place, and uniquely placed at the top of the old town. Looming above the neat rows of the cemetery are the formidable outer walls of the castle. This tall stone barrier, featuring regular arrow-slit windows, was created to prevent those without invitation from entering the castle, but some beings are not so easily halted. In fact, if the many witnesses are to be believed, some of them can apparently move through walls. One such example is a ghost known as the Pink Lady. She is described, as you can imagine, as a dark-haired female wearing a long pink-coloured dress. This distressed-looking figure is often seen hurrying through the courtyards and making her way through the cemetery to the nearby Church of the Holy Rood. Witnesses say that she appears to be frantically looking around for something or someone, and her appearance is always accompanied by the scent of rose blooms. However, the Pink Lady is the more timid of Stirling's two supernatural ladies. The most famous ghost associated with the castle is the Green Lady, believed to be the spirit of a servant who died in a fire whilst trying to save her queen, Mary Queen of Scots. She's often seen gliding through the castle halls, dressed in a flowing green gown, as if she's on her way to attend some long-forgotten duty. Those staff and visitors who've been graced by the manifestation of either lady have said that they fade away before their eyes, leaving the witnesses shocked and struggling to process the encounter. Other ghostly sightings include a strange spectral Highlander, dressed in tartan, who appears to be so lifelike that visitors often mistake him for a costumed tour guide as he moves around the inner close-in buildings. On more than one occasion, they have turned to speak to him, only to see him vanish. This particular ghost was also captured on an iconic analogue photograph, in which his half-transparent image even featured on the negative. The supernatural elements don't end there. In Stirling Castle there are reports of strange noises, flickering lights, cold spots, disembodied voices, and the unshakable feeling of being watched, all of which adds to Stirling Castle's eerie charm. But it is not only in the city and in the central belt of Scotland that we find such enigmatic and historically rich structures. Perched dramatically on a cliff top overlooking the North Sea, the Notter Castle is a place of stunning beauty and dark history. Once a stronghold of Scottish resistance, it played a crucial role during the Wars of Independence. The castle was also the site where Covenanters were imprisoned and brutally treated in the 17th century. Many were tortured and killed there. This atmospheric castle is accessed via a narrow path which vanishes when the sea mist rolls in, creating the illusion that the castle is floating in the mist. It looks like the location taken straight out of a Tolkien novel, or from the worlds of Skyrim or Game of Thrones. Such is the location's isolated beauty that film director Franco Zeffirelli chose it as his Elsinore for his 1992 film version of Hamlet, a tale of murder and ghosts. It is hardly surprising then that visitors who have walked the narrow path leading to this island castle have reported seeing ghostly figures wandering amongst the ruins, and as the sun fades, many have seen strange lights appearing in the tower windows. Some have even claimed to hear disembodied voices and whispers carried on the sea air, as if the souls of the castle's tragic past still linger there. So what could possibly explain these many hauntings spread across Scotland? Well, when it comes to ghosts, there are 4 main theories. The first is that ghosts are genuinely trapped spirits who for some reason did not progress on to the afterlife following their passing. The reasons for this might be because of the sudden nature of their passing, or because some have unfinished business or retribution, like the ghost of Hamlet's father. These ghosts will be unable to move beyond this earthly realm until they have accepted their situation, or unless their business is somehow completed, and as such, they are more likely to interact with witnesses. The second explanation of ghosts is that of a recording, sometimes referred to as the stone tape theory. This hypothesises that hauntings are like replays of past events, which were somehow captured in the environment in which they took place. This makes them like echoes, and would support hauntings like the sound of the battle in Culloden or the Pink Lady in Stirling Castle, in which the ghosts seem to be engaged in whatever activity they had been carrying out in life. A related theory is that of ghosts being explained by time slips, in which a witness is momentarily glimpsing the past. It relies on the presumption of glitches in our time-space, through which ordinary people find themselves observing past events and their environment exactly as it was in the past. But it would explain why many ghostly encounters are fleeting and often accompanied by other sensations such as smells from the past. And finally, there are plenty of skeptics who confidently dismiss ghosts as an impossibility, pointing instead to features like infrasound in the environment, pareidolia, where we imagine seeing things like faces in clouds, and the feverish imaginings of a primed and anxious brain. It presumes that people who hear about ghosts in a castle are more likely to encounter them. But ghosts could of course serve a deeper function. By their very definition, ghosts allow us to keep the past alive. In the case of events as traumatic as the massacre in Glencoe or Culloden, the collective emotional pain is almost too great to dissipate into the mists. Ghosts of such events serve to tie the past to the present, urging us to remember, and as such perhaps stay alert for future threats. I know it could be claimed that this role could equally be fulfilled by historians, and perhaps it could. But to me, ghosts often elicit or convey an emotional aspect that historical accounts don't always, and for that reason, they are worthy of our attention. And of course, ghosts offer us hope, confirmation that at least something of us will remain after we have shuffled off our mortal coil. Whatever might remain is debatable, but the fact that something might is very attractive. An American writer who shares my name once said that to be seen is the ambition of ghosts, and to be remembered is the ambition of the dead. Those seem like noble aspirations to me. So that's perhaps where we should leave the topic. From mist-covered battlefields to eerie underground streets, Scotland is brimming with places that hold both historical and paranormal intrigue. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, visiting these sites can provide a fascinating glimpse into our country's turbulent past. If you're brave enough, you might take a trip yourself and see if you can experience some of Scotland's ghostly legends for yourself. If that's something that appeals to you, might I make one recommendation? The Edinburgh Vaults, a labyrinth of eerie chambers nestled beneath the South Bridge's 19 archways, have long been steeped in mystery and dark whispers. Today they are infamous for being one of the most haunted sites in Edinburgh. Picture yourself embarking on a spine-chilling night tour with only a flickering lantern to guide your way through the shadowed corridors. The chilling tales you'll hear are merely the beginning of what the ancient underground of Edinburgh has silently witnessed. The city of Edinburgh rests atop 7 formidable hills, though most are now hidden beneath the looming shadow of 5 grand bridges. Before these bridges were built, the city was a maze of winding, muddy paths, making travel treacherous. In 1788, the South Bridge was constructed, meant to connect the bustling High Street to the University of Edinburgh. However, the bridge seemed cursed from the very start. Legend has it that the first person meant to cross this bridge was Edinburgh's oldest resident, the respected wife of a judge. Yet tragedy struck before the bridge's completion. She passed away, and her lifeless body was carried across the bridge in a coffin when it finally opened, as its first guest. The locals, who were rife with superstition and fearful of the bridge's ominous history, shunned it completely. Some went to great lengths, taking a circuitous route around the town to use the North Bridge instead. But still, the pressure of a growing population led to the dark arches of the South Bridge being leased out to businesses that were desperate for space. The vaults beneath the bridge were cold, damp and cracked, with rainwater seeping into the lower levels, causing rot. Within just 30 years, the vaults were abandoned by the merchants. As the city expanded, the vaults were soon forgotten, left to decay in the shadows. But during the mid-19th century, desperate souls, including Irish immigrants fleeing the famine, sought refuge in the forsaken vaults. Disease ran rampant and crime thrived, turning the vaults into Edinburgh's underworld, literally. It was also rumoured that the vaults served as a grim storage for cadavers sold to the university's medical school for dissection. In the 1860s, the squatters were evicted and the vaults were sealed with rubble to prevent further intrusion. So for decades, the vaults were lost to time, until a chance excavation in the 1980s unearthed chilling remnants of the past. Among the rubble were forgotten artefacts, children's toys, horseshoes, buttons, clay pots and dinner plates, all silent relics of a forgotten life. Now, the Edinburgh Vaults stand as one of the most haunted places in the UK. Visitors who dare to venture into the depths often feel the temperature drop suddenly, as if the air itself carries the weight of the past. Whispers of children's laughter and the haunting strains of a woman's song echo through the gloom. Ghostly apparitions, both fleeting and full-bodied, are said to roam the vaults. Some spirits have made themselves known as regulars, and one of the most infamous is Mr. Boots, also known as the Watcher. This tall, ragged figure lingers in the darkest corners of the vaults, his heavy boot steps echoing through the eerie silence. His presence is so undeniable that in 2015 he infamously photobombed a picture taken by a couple of young women. The chilling image captured a dark, looming figure in the background, a reminder that Mr. Boots is never far from those who dare to venture into the depths of the vaults. I can partly attest to this myself. When a number of decades ago, I led a party of senior school pupils down into the vaults when we were studying ghosts as part of a Gothic unit in class. I remember how, in the candlelight, we had stood, gathered in one of the vaults, hearing stories of such ghostly figures, when a girl at the back, standing in a corner, fainted. We quickly led her out, sat her down, gave her a hot chocolate in the warmth of the gift shop, and I asked her what had happened. The girl explained how she'd been standing in the corner, watching the candlelight flicker in the eyes of her classmates as they all listened to ghostly tales, when she suddenly felt an icy breath on her neck, and a cold hand touched her cheek, whilst a voice whispered in her ear, "Get out!" I'm Norman Brown. Thank you for sharing your time with me. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and rate the show on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, or whichever platform you use. A new episode will drop every fortnight or sooner, so there will be many more scary stories to explore. Tonight's episode, Echoes, featured information from visitscotland.com, authenticvacations.com, the National Trust for Scotland. Music was by Alfred Grupestra of A Creative Journey, JP Richmond of Creative Audio. Additional sounds were supplied by the Free Sound community, all of whom you will find over on the kind contributors on Pixabay. As for you, the listener, I appreciate your company this evening. Stay scared.